It's David Croyle right now on Radio for Your Neighborhood, AM 1380 and FM 103.7, WTYM, Katanning, Ford City.
He's wacky, he's zany, wacky and zany. It's another wacky and zany show.
Good morning, Armstrong County. I'm David Croyle. Welcome to David and Friends. So glad to have you with us today. We want to kind of pull back from all of the local news and the national news and the international news and all the things that we could be talking about to have a fun day today. You know, you need that once in a while, not to get too serious and be able to talk about some fun stuff. So today we are going to talk about the White House. Yeah, now it's not what you think. Just stay with me here for a few minutes because I have with me this morning a person who is quite a written, published author. He is the author of Painting the White House. It's a book, and we're going to talk about it in just a minute, but we're going to talk first of all with Hal Marcovitz. Good morning, Hal.
Good morning.
Now, this is a great book that you have produced, and we want to say that everything in the book, though, this is a fictional book, so none of this stuff really happened, right?
Well, I hope not, but, you never know these days.
Isn't that the truth? Things that just keep happening, that it just keeps getting weirder and weirder as we go along, things that we find out that are happening. And now, let's just kind of put into perspective, first of all, the book that you've written. Let's talk about that. And then we're going to talk about some of the weird stuff that is happening or did happen in the White House, but for real. But let's talk about the fictional book first, Painting the White House. Tell me just a little bit of the line of it, of what we should expect.
Well, again, it is, as you said, it is a novel. It's fiction, and it's kind of a goofy story about a ordinary house painter who gets hired by the First Lady to paint the White House, as the title suggests. And once he gets in there and he gets started, he gets involved in all the crazy intrigues and adventures and misadventures and all the strange things that go on in the White House. And he kind of approaches it with kind of a seriousness and humorous, both seriousness and humorous, look on life, and it's kind of a political satire. When I was writing it, though, it occurred to me that, I better do some research on the White House and, make it sound at least I know what I'm talking about. So I started researching the White House, reading everything I could on it. And I found that, these weird, goofy stories I'm making up really aren't that unusual, that actually a lot of strange, atypical stuff goes on there, and it's kind of funny to talk about. So I kind of merged the two together, and that's where we are today.
Well, the truth is, the White House is full of people, and people have quirks. Every one of us has a quirk. Most of the time it's hidden and you don't show it in public, but nevertheless, you have a certain quirk, a certain thing that's part of your life that other people may think are really, really weird, but it is just true, and it's what happened. And I want to go to the one quirk that these are things that did happen. Okay, the things we're going to talk about
Absolutely.
right now did happen in the White House, and I was reading about when she lived in the White House, Chelsea Clinton. She enjoyed watching TV with her dad, which is a great thing. What did they watch though? What kind of a TV show were they interested in?
Bill always made time for Chelsea when he was governor of Arkansas and later president. And, a special time they had together was watching TV. And their favorite show, or at least Chelsea's favorite show, was American Gladiators.
Really?
If you remember that show.
Okay. Little on the robust side there, but that's all right. Like I said, everybody has a quirk of what they like, and what I think one of the interesting things that you have up here too is Ronald Reagan. You said he wanted to ride a horse in the first inaugural parade, and I could see that because he was a horse lover and he rode horses quite a bit. But the Secret Service, they didn't want him to do that, right?
Right. You ride a horse, you're out there in the middle of the the boulevard while they're parading down through Washington in the inaugural parade, and the Secret Service had some trepidations about that. But they got together and they thought it out, and they said, well, how can we protect the president? And they came up with the idea of fashioning a steel bulletproof cowboy hat for him to wear, and also steel bulletproof underwear. And you can imagine that might have been a little uncomfortable, and they kicked it around and decided actually not to do that, and they managed to talk him out of the thing with the horse.
I was thinking about George H.W. Bush, the first Bush, and we have a friend here in Ford City, and he actually worked in the administration and worked very closely with Barbara Bush. And we've had him on the program occasionally whenever, especially when she passed away. He was on with us, and we talked about some of the things. And he did. I remember him talking about Millie, but I don't remember him talking about the things that you uncovered in your, not in your book, but on your website. If you go to paintingthewhitehouse.com and you go to White House Weirdness, you can see some of these things that really did happen. And so George H.W. Bush, he and his dog Millie were pretty close, weren't they?
Yeah, and if you go online and you kind of Google George H.W. Bush and Millie, you see these really nice photos of George and Barbara walking Millie across the White House grounds, and you know, they're very heartwarming and everything. But what I learned is that George liked Millie so much he used to take showers with her.
Wow. Well, I guess there's nothing wrong with that. At least the dog had to get a bath, so it was probably easier to put her in the shower than it was to try to stand at a sink and get it all done. So,
well, yeah, and you know, I mean, there's been lots of pets in the White House, and you know, the public loves them, and you see pictures of the dogs romping across the White House lawn. But there's also some really strange stories about White House pets. You know, Calvin Coolidge had a pet raccoon.
Really?
Yes, he named it Rebecca, and he used to stroll around the White House grounds alongside of Rebecca, and his aides swore they saw him talking to Rebecca, you know, talking things over. And he had a little, he used to let Rebecca into the White House during the day, and this raccoon would roam around the halls. And then he had a little house built on the grounds for Rebecca to spend the night. And this is a raccoon, okay?
Well, now
I assume she was also picking through the White House garbage, but I don't know.
Well, you know, whenever I was younger, I remember a friend of mine had a pet skunk. And,
okay.
you know, so, I mean, you can... I don't know if you ever really totally domesticate those kind of animals, but to a certain degree, they can be somewhat domesticated. But and I tell you what, you know, he may have talked to the raccoon, but I know a lot of people that discuss their life with their pet, with their cat, their dog, you know, and well, he doesn't love me anymore, you know, and the dog looks up lovingly, like he knows or she knows what they're saying, and. So I don't know. Maybe he wasn't far off. Maybe the country was in better hands with a raccoon.
Well, I guess at the time that might have been true.
Perhaps.
I mean, we just went into the Great Depression a few years later, so you know, once the raccoon was out of the White House, you know, anything could happen.
There you go. There you go. I was kind of captivated also with Bill Clinton, who I had some association with whenever I was down at Fox News in D.C. whenever he was first inaugurated. And so, you know, it was interesting to watch him take over the White House. But he, before the White House, before his political days, you said that you found out he was an air conditioning repairman.
No, not quite. But close. What happened was after he was in the White House, he encountered one of the maintenance guys fixing the air conditioning. And whatever else was going on then, you know, negotiations with, Congress or some diplomatic event or whatever, he stopped it. And he spent about the next half hour with the air conditioning guy helping him fix the ventilation system in the White House.
Really? Now, I won't even ask how he would do that, but nevertheless, he maybe needed the diversion of some sort. But then you go fast forward to Donald Trump, and when you start talking about air conditioning systems, wasn't that something that it was a huge renovation whenever he moved into the mansion? Right.
The shortly after Trump moved in, they started a $3.5 million renovation of the White House.
Maybe that was to fix whatever Clinton did wrong.
Well, I was going to say most of that money is going into the air conditioning system. Trump has made a few other small changes, nothing really that weird. He didn't like the chandelier in like the private dining room, so he bought his own chandelier. And he also had a 60-inch TV installed on the wall in the dining room. I guess so he could watch Fox News while he's having lunch. One of the weirder stories, though, about Trump in the White House is that it's not unusual for presidents and first ladies not to share the bedroom on the second floor of the White House. Lots of presidents and first ladies have had their own bedrooms, and I can imagine why. I'm sure the president's up late, working, and the first lady wants to get to bed. So the Trumps, though, as others, do not share a bedroom in the White House. But as I learned, Melania doesn't even sleep on the same floor. The living quarters are on the second floor of the White House, and that's where Trump's bedroom is. But there's also a couple rooms above that. There's a small third floor. And during the Obama years, Michelle's mother, the president's mother-in-law, lived in those two rooms above on the third floor. And currently, I understand Melania lives there, and she has her own room, and their son lives there up there with her, and she has also like an exercise area up there too. So that's kind of not even on the same floor.
Well, yeah. I guess though, whatever arrangements they've made in their marriage, it must be going on. So whether it's sleeping in the same floor or not, it kind of works for them. We're talking today with Hal Marcovitz. Hal is the author of a book that's called none other than Painting the White House. Painting the White House. You can go to paintingthewhitehouse.com and find out more information on it. And there is a tab on that website that talks about different weird things that really did go on. Now, the book is a fictional book, but the things that are on the White House weirdness page, they're things that really, really did happen. And, whenever you start talking about the painting the White House, Hal, we've always known the White House to be white, but was there any different color ever used on the executive mansion at any time?
Well, it's always been white, and in fact, I believe it was during perhaps the Carter administration when they actually repainted the exterior, and they stripped off like 36 old coats of white paint. So it's always been white. But during World War II, though, the Army approached the Roosevelts, and they had some security concerns, and they were actually doing all sorts of things to make sure, the president was protected during the war. And they had dug a bomb shelter under the White House, and they had all sorts of things like that. But then they came to the president with a plan, and they said they were very worried about enemy bombers coming in across the sea, and they proposed painting the White House camouflage. And that kind of hit a sour note with Roosevelt, and he turned them down.
Well, and probably rightfully so, because we would call it the camouflage house.
That's right. Those greens and browns.
Yeah.
And,
So, People often have went to the White House and they have given, gifts. So obviously you go in, and normally whenever you go in and someone invites you over, and it's a high-level thing, you give a gift, a housewarming gifts of some sort. But when Richard Nixon was in the White House, he had several high-level people come to see him. One of them was Elvis Presley, right?
This is probably one of my favorite stories that I came across. It's really really amazing. Elvis was something of a police buff. He collected badges and police badges and belt buckles and all sorts of swag from police departments. And he had his eye on a badge from the Drug Enforcement Administration, and he wanted a DEA badge. So he made some inquiries, and he found out the only way he can get a DEA badge is if he's deputized as a DEA agent. And since he was not he was a rock and roll singer and he wasn't in the employ of the federal government, that wasn't likely to happen. But he gets the idea that, maybe the president can deputize me as a DEA agent. So he calls his gang together, his guys down there in Memphis, and he tells them he wants to go right to the White House and he wants to go see Nixon and get himself deputized as a DEA agent. So he gathers up his group, and they go right to the airport, and they fly up to Washington. They hire a car, and they drive right up to the White House gate. And Elvis gets out, and he goes up to the White House guard at the gate, and he tells him he's there to see the president. So the guard calls in to the White House and said, "You're not going to believe this, but Elvis is out here, and he wants to see Nixon, and he's talking about being deputized as a DEA agent." So this story circulates around the White House, and all the aides get together, and they're discussing what to do, and they finally decide, well, this would be a pretty good piece of publicity for the president. So there's this period, like right after lunch, where they reserve time for Nixon to meet, dignitaries who's ever around, diplomats, Girl Scout leaders, who's ever going through the White House. So they squeeze Elvis in during this period. And Elvis goes in, and they have this meeting, and they shake hands, and Nixon deputizes Elvis and gives him a DEA badge. And Elvis, to show his, to thank the president for this honor, gives Nixon a gift, and it's a gun. He actually got a gun through security at the White House. And as I read, the Secret Service, he did show it to the Secret Service on the way in, and they looked and they made sure it wasn't loaded. But even today, the notion of bringing a gun into the White House is just unbelievable.
Wow.
But he gave Nixon the gun, and they had a great time. And the photo of Nixon shaking hands with Elvis, I understand, is the #1 selling souvenir at the Nixon Library in California.
Oh my! Wow.
And there's one other really funny tidbit from this story, that after Elvis and his gang leaves, Nixon confides to his aides that he really didn't know who that guy was.
Oh my! Oh my!
He was sort of vaguely aware that his daughters listened to the guy's music, but he, really didn't know he was that big of a star, or really who he was.
Wow. We're talking right now with Hal Marcovitz, and Hal has written a book called Painting the White House. Hal, last question real quick. If you actually did have to paint the White House, how many gallons of paint would it really take to do that?
There has been some discussion about this over the years. There's something like 130 rooms in the White House, 400 some doors, 150 windows, 8 staircases. I mean, list goes on and on, but it's estimated, as far as the exterior is concerned, it's estimated it would take 570 gallons of paint to actually paint the exterior of the White House.
Wow.
The interior, who knows?
Yeah. Wow. All right, Hal Marcovitz, my guest this morning. Hal, I appreciate you so much being with me. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
All right, thank you very much, too.
And check out his website, paintingthewhitehouse.com. And for his book, you'll enjoy it. It's a great fictional book, but there's a lot of other good stuff on the website you need to check out. I'll be right back.
WTYM, Katanning Ford City, on the radio at AM 1380 and FM 103.7, and online at WTYMradio.com. Radio, computer, or smartphone. Stay connected to Radio for your neighborhood.